my view, support by the committee.
Call Andrew Little.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Appreciate the opportunity to take a call on this part of the Alcohol Law Reform Bill. And so there's no question, as many of those who have contributed to the debate so far today have acknowledged, is that alcohol has become, if indeed it has ever ceased to be, a most insidious influence on society and in our community. Part of the problem, as we've all acknowledged, is that we continue to debate alcohol law reform as if it were a moral issue, as if it were something other than what it actually is, which is a health issue. Alcohol is a drug. It's a drug that has won considerable social acceptance over decades, indeed centuries, and so we confer upon it a status that we wouldn't give any other comparable substance. And indeed we eschew other substances that have as much of, if not a greater impact as alcohol. So we debate this in a funny context and at a difficult time. But perhaps the other thing that has happened more so in the last 20 years than prior to that is the considerable financial stake that now many businesses and individuals have in the peddling of this particular drug under the cover of it being socially acceptable. And so in that respect, the supplementary order papers that go to this part, particularly that from Ian Lees-Galloway and from my other colleague, Dr David Clark, that provide restrictions on the marketing of our alcohol, those, sir, in my submission, are absolutely critical. If we are serious about saying of alcohol distribution, alcohol sale and distribution, that we wish to do something that is meaningfully going to address the serious problems that all the evidence tells us now prevails. The problem of a growing number, an excessive number of people turning up at our emergency departments every weekend seeking care and help because of their alcohol-related and inflicted wounds, because of the number of young people who are falling prey to the blandishments of alcohol and brewing companies and suffering the health effects as a consequence. Not just young people, but the older people who continue or embarked on habits that are causing major health effects. Other costs on the health system. If we're serious about addressing those and accepting those as a social problem, then it is incumbent on this Parliament to regulate appropriately and accordingly. And when it comes to marketing and advertising, this Parliament can provide leadership, can discharge its responsibilities as a tribune of the people and do something meaningful about it. And that does mean confronting some of those large and wealthy vested interests and saying we don't wish to continue the social problems that prevail. We don't wish to decline to do something in the face of something we know we can do something about. And so regulating the advertising and the marketing is a response that this Parliament can make that will confront the vested interests, but is vital if we're going to address and meet those public health demands that are on us. Tuarara Flavel's supplementary order, or his proposed amendment, which is the ban to take effect in 2 years, that is a very harsh initiative. That is a very harsh initiative. And the sad reality is, as he points out in his own explanatory note, is that there are many sports clubs and similar organisations that have become dependent on the support they get from the brewing companies and other marketers of alcohol for, if not their survival, at least to provide them with a source of support and finance that enables them to function in the way that they do. It would be most desirable, in my submission, Mr Chairman, to remove alcohol and alcohol branding and marketing from sports activities and sports functions. But at the moment, we need to focus on those things that are achievable and possible and credible. And for those reasons, Mr Chairman, I will be supporting the SOPs of my colleagues, Mr Lees-Galloway and Dr Clark, because they focus on the very immediate and very insidious advertising and reach that the alcohol companies currently engage in. They have an obvious target, and it is young. And the style of that advertising so often is clearly aimed at those who are on the precipice of or who are just starting to make their decisions and choices about alcohol. And there is no matching or corresponding advertising, Mr. Chairman.
Andrew Little.
There is no matching or corresponding advertising, public good advertising, you might say, about the deleterious effects of alcohol, apart from perhaps on the traffic front. And certainly our Ministry of Transport has spent a large amount of money on the drink driving issue. But it doesn't go to that information that enables particularly young people embarking on their life habits, including the habits around the consumption of alcohol. There is no social good advertising that informs people or educates people about making an informed choice about the consumption of alcohol, about the impact, for example, of the hard liquors, about the impact of the volumes of alcohol and the impact that they can have, about the long-term consequences on the organs of the body. So, Mr. Chairman, I think in that context, and knowing the vast sums of money that get spent to pitch to young people and to other sectors of the community too, but predominantly to young people, which is why they get into the sports clubs and the sports activities, so that calls out for a responsible approach from this Parliament. And that should be underscored by the very call that members of the public have been making, that submitters to the bill made, and that indeed members in the last few hours this afternoon have been making, which is for this Parliament to do something meaningful and therefore substantial. Because the sort of frilly bits type approach that has been taken by the bill to date is not intended, clearly not intended on the face of the bill to date, to have any meaningful impact at all. Or if it's not intended to, I mean, the reality is that the legislation as it currently stands and without the sort of amendments that we're currently now debating is not going to have any impact. So, Mr. Chairman, I simply record my views and my intentions in this regard, but do so because I consider, like all of us, that if I am responsible in my representation role and in discharging my responsibilities as a member of this Parliament, knowing the social ill that is now that sits at the feet of the alcohol industry, we are called upon to respond and to react, and providing proper and meaningful regulation of this part of the industry, without depriving those who can consume responsibly and all the injunctions we get about that. These types of measures that are provided for in these two SOPs is crucial and is necessary, and Sarah, I will be supporting those.
Call the Honourable Leanne Dalzell.
Mr. Chairman, I do want to take another call because there have been a number of comments